Well, in terms of the article that I wrote, I talked about how we have, in the last few years, accepted as true something that future generations are going to be bewildered by. And the essential thing that we now have as our new superstition is that we can grow the economy by shrinking it. And about a couple of years ago, when the financial system collapsed, the Republicans and conservatives proposed a novel concept, which was that we shrink the economy by expanding it. And that had to do with the stimulus. And so they said that we spent almost $800 billion in a stimulus, and presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann declared, had the president done nothing, we would have seen 300,000 jobs created this week. So in other words, by adding $800 billion to the economy, the Republicans indicated that we actually lost jobs, which is something that one has to wonder as to how that could possibly be. You could argue that if you injected $800 billion into the economy and you borrowed it, that at some point the debt would become due and interest rates might rise, and so in the future there might be some harm. But anyone who indicates that you inject it into the economy today and in the short term you lose jobs, I think is somewhat nonsense. And that then kind of transformed itself into the other side, which is that if we shrink the economy, we can grow it, and that's what the debt and deficit and debt ceiling debate has been all about. And the conclusion of the debt debate was that there was a bipartisan agreement to shrink the economy by about $2 trillion, and somehow they think that that's going to grow. And interestingly enough, the Standard & Poor's, the markets almost collapsed. They began to collapse the day after the debt ceiling agreement was ratified. That is, after we no longer were worried about the prospect of default. The markets began to collapse, and then Standard & Poor's downgrades the debt of the United States, saying that we're not shrinking it fast enough. We have to shrink it by another $2 trillion. In order to get out of our economic recession. I find it fascinating that Standard & Poor's did not say you're not raising enough revenue. When you have a debt, you can do two things. You can reduce your spending or you can increase your revenue, but apparently you're only downgraded if you don't decrease your spending. So we're in this situation in which we're in this spiral, really, of austerity, supposedly leading to economic prosperity, except that all of us know that it won't. The private sector will not invest in supplying goods and services unless there's a demand. And right now the private sector sees no demand, and so it keeps its capital in its vaults or even lays off people. And this is, of course, happening in Europe, too. In fact, it's the Greek syndrome that has now been transferred to the United States, but the same policies are being adapted for the most part in Europe, which is that the more you cut demand, the better your economy will grow out of debt, except that all of us, any 6-year-old knows that that's not true.